Welcome to the Association's Futures Podcast, brought to you by Association Activision. We ask you to join us to discuss the future of the Association's community. How can we build and focus on the many futures we will see during these disruptive times? Let's get started with today's guest.
Welcome to Association Futures Podcast. I'm Michael Buteri, your host, and today's guest is Dr. Eliyahu Lotzar. Dr. Lotzar is a change agent who passionately seeks the greatest good for the greatest number of people by working at organizational, team, and individual levels. A collaboration builder who provides concrete processes, he is essentially an organizational therapist. Eliyahu is founder of Reframed Reality, LLC, located in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. The consultancy provides a wide range of services, including organizational health assessment and improvement, action planning and operationalizing strategic plans, team building, executive coaching, executive and board retreats, and leadership development. There are more which can be found at the reframedreality.com website, and I encourage you to visit the site. He also partners with healthcare consultants Clinical Buddy and with the internationally recognized DC Institute that helps organizations implement rapid change without destructive conflict. Eliyahu has a doctorate in executive leadership from St. John Fisher College, a master's of social work administration from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, a bachelor's of arts in political philosophy from Michigan State University, and now he thinks he should work. His direction-setting research in employee soft skills has been sought after by ventures such as GE, Halliburton, GlaxoSmithKline, and Infinity Broadband, institutions of higher education and technical education, governments, and military agencies in over 125 countries. He holds a number of certificates, including, but not limited to, certified and authorized everything DISC partner trainer and management trainer, a DC Institute certifications in conceptual foundations and leading highly effective teams, and Israeli Ministry of Education certified group facilitator. Eliyahu is soon to publish his first book, Working with God, the 10 Modes of Next Level Leadership. Join me in welcoming Eliyahu to the podcast. Hi, Eliyahu.
Hi, Michael. Absolutely good to see you and wonderful to be here.
And I'm so happy that you agreed to be on the podcast. Hey, let's get right into this.
Okay.
Reframed reality. You know, the word reframed is used all the time by lots and lots of different consultants and consultancies. So what do you mean when you say reframed, and how does that impact 21st century realities?
Okay. Two questions there. So the first question, what do I mean by reframed? Like this. The most powerful element a leader has in his or her toolkit or arsenal, depending on the type of leader, is really not just the content, the day-to-day, but the real executive leader has the context. Right? So content is one thing, and that's what we have to deal with all the time, responding to emails and like this. But leaders also have the chance to take thought time out, and they should. And if they don't have the chance, they should try to make the chance, because being aware of the context really influences the direction of the association and all the things that get done within the association in the most powerful, fundamental, foundational way. And so when you change the reality of what is seen. You're changing the context. Nothing out there actually changes until you interact with it differently. But when you change what you see, how you define the context, and the wisdom you bring to approaching that context, then it's much easier to solve ongoing problems and not grab, but latch onto and utilize opportunities.
Well, thank you. And the second part of that, so how does that impact 21st century realities?
Aha. Okay. 21st century reality is one of extraordinarily quick change, right? And I'm sure people have been thinking that ever since the railroad was invented or the steam engine, Um, and so we're going to continue thinking that, and our ability to change what we see as the context of our organization is super, super important to our ability to survive, because who our members are, what our members' concerns are, the environment in which our members operate and or our funders, all those things are changing more quickly than they used to. Especially now, this year is becoming a year of rapid fundamental change to organizations, really, to the context that organizations are in, with the introduction of different platforms that allow us to utilize AI. And that's just going to have, it's an earthquake. It's a seismic change that's only starting, to move the tectonic plates underneath. But to me, that's the 21st century.
Very interesting, yeah. And there are other elements of the 21st century that I'd like you to comment on. We're going through a kind of social upheaval, if you would. We have a lot of cultural issues because, our world has changed. People think of that they live in a town, a village, a county, a region, or even a country, but it's spread all over the world. And, you have to think about that in a new way because culture is so important to the quality of work that individuals and teams and organizations do. Do you have any specific thoughts about how culture is affecting our ability to see in context the reality of where we are today?
Well, sure. Let's just read an encyclopedia. It's that is huge. That is huge. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, because I'm thinking of a number of things.
Sure.
On the one side, so I mentioned AI, right? On the one side, there's fast technological change. That's what a lot of us think of in terms of change. And a lot of us these days think of change as being driven by technology. The iPhone stuck our kids in, their world is from here to here, right? Even if they're sitting right next to each other on the bus, it's still this. But there's a whole other side of change, and that's because the world is getting smaller. Like you mentioned, people think that they're in a village, a town, a municipality, a county, a state, but really we're interacting with broader and broader stretches of the world, right? Because more and more of our life is online. I mean, look at how we're talking. We're supposed to be sitting in our comfy chairs across a coffee table, with a mug that says Activision on it,
Right.
but we're not, right? So I'm in my office and you're, I think, in the clouds. I can't tell where you are, but you can be wherever you want to be. So that's obvious. However, what that means is that more and more cultures are interacting. And when I say cultures, I mean the standard definition. Maybe so this week I've dealt with people from different parts of India. I've dealt with people from Eastern Europe. and different parts of the United States.
So
Okay.
we happen to be recording this. We happen to be recording this session on Juneteenth.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about, the idea of reframing reality and the celebration that is new to the United States uh, in terms of its formality. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get specific. With the world coming together, with different cultures coming together, right? So the way I approach everything, not just in executive coaching or working with organizational systems, but like everything, is competing values. Okay. Everything in this world, anyway. So, competing values. And if we broaden out from I don't know if to say the tragedy or the celebration of June 19th. It's kind of like both, right? I mean, June 19th, it took Texas forever. No offense, Texans. I love Texas. Um, but it did take Texans a notably long time to publicly acknowledge, okay, yeah, we do have this 13th Amendment, and golly, slaves really actually are free. Okay, it took them a long time. Nevertheless, that just is a specific example of a set of competing values hitting each other. Okay, now in the U.S. as a whole today, we still have this seesaw back and forth, um, jockeying for primary value. I'm going to say I'm going to go really large here, between two sets of values. Broadly speaking, one of them is the human value. We have things out there for humanizing the workplace is a whole thing. The new generation, Gen Z especially, is like, hey, I deserve to talk to the CEO whenever I want, and I'm just as important, and other things that I'm not going to say, even though they may be too embarrassed to say it. But it's been happening that way more and more throughout the generations. So there's the value of the individual human as is all across the country being seen as very important, hence DEI, right? Diversity, every human being is okay. Inclusion, y'all should be, we all should be in it together. And equity, hey, even if I've been outside, not only do I need equality, I should be given a step up that acknowledges that systemically I am downtrodden, I am in a difficult place, and we can't have equality without having equity. Okay, so it's a thing. It's for people in groups, individuals and groups. Now, on the other side, there's this whole value of the importance of economics. Okay, actually, individuals aren't important. It's the shareholders in public companies, or the investors in private companies, or the funders in associations and foundations, who really have to have their needs met. Because if we don't have money, we can't run this organization, we can't do good stuff, right? So sorry, individual, what you're asking for takes too many resources, it slows things down, we need results, we need to be able to change. In general, there's a fight between the importance of economics, which is impersonal, and the importance of the human, which is not necessarily going to generate the most wealth. Okay. And that harkens back to the whole fight that was going on with slavery, right? It's that same fight. We're still fighting for what is more important, the rights of the wealthy to own, the wealthy and powerful to keep their wealth and keep their power, or the rights of the individual to everybody have equal opportunity. And it really is still a fight. Oh, it's going on quite a bit. It shows up in our associations, from what I've seen, in numerous boards or executives saying, okay, let's, when 3 years ago, when George Floyd happened, I think it was three, when George Floyd was killed. So a lot of associations felt the need to respond and put up a statement on the website, and then to create DEI initiatives. And what I've seen in my consulting is that, yes, it's important. Some organizations are keeping it at top importance, but mostly it's something that needs to be worked out while we focus on increasing revenue streams and providing for our stakeholders, completing our mission. And our mission hasn't, we haven't integrated the idea of every human is important is absolutely as 100% part of our mission, even though we say it, as is whatever our little piece of the pie is, helping with this little section of healthcare or whatever it is. So that's competing values. And the question is, what do we do with it? And we have to make each value conscious, and each association, each organization has to have that open discussion with everybody that's there, because that's one of those values about, well, where does the importance of the individual end and the importance of the group or the organization take over from there, and vice versa.
Yep. An interesting perspective. Thanks for that. I really appreciate that, Eliyahu. Hey, in your work, in your consultancy, what do you see as what we might call the major elements that stop or inhibit executives and teams from doing the reframing that you've discussed here so far?
Wow, great question. I had it on my website for a while as pig-headedness, but that's rude, and so I took it off. I'm pig-headed too. I will certainly admit it. What I mean by that is legacy thinking. It is so hard to think from a different angle, because if we don't operate efficiently, we're run over, right? Or we burn out. Nobody can rethink everything from the start every day they wake up. It's crazy, right? So we rely on our systems, but our systems, whatever they are, HR processes go in this kind of certain way. IT we think of as a separate department, even though it's completely integral to everything that gets done, right? Your members are affected by the IT, but IT is over here and membership is over here. But they work together completely like that. So our thinking of efficiencies that we have created and the processes that we've created is based on the way the external environment used to be and the way the organization was in the beginning stages. Right? And so it's always a trade-off for me to make a change, especially to reframe the way I think about how my different departments interact. I'm going to have to be willing to see that there is a new situation. But if I'm skilled at dealing with the old situation, because that's my experience, then it's going to be personally threatening for me not to mention it's going to take a lot more time to explore dealing with a new situation like AI, for instance, right? So how many of your listeners right here have started, probably many of them, at least half, I'm going to guess, have started using ChatGPT just to check it out. How many have explored what AI is doing in the HR systems, right? Probably a whole lot fewer. How many have explored what AI is doing to their membership and what they expect? I don't know, but it's important.
Well, it's very difficult to get individuals and organizations to think long-term strategically using strategic thinking skills versus I got to get this done,
Right.
today. And
Right.
I think that causes part of the problem, which leads me to another question. So when you work with executives and organizations and all the parts that we've talked about here, uh, it must be difficult to get them to see the whole picture, the big picture, for them and their organization in order to begin to implement the kind of change you're talking about. Uh, what are some of the elements that continue to cause this inability to see the big picture, to silo things, to work on your little piece of the action, and not really consider all these other pieces that you've mentioned here today?
Yeah. Well, you've been a CEO, so I'm sure you can guess, right? You're responsible to today's emails, right? Your your board chair writes you an email about forget about today. How about, gee whiz, why didn't the annual conference make more profit?
Yeah, right.
Right? Why did that hotel cost so much? Some people really get into, details.
Right.
And so you are forced as a leader to deal with other people's concerns, right? But an executive director has to rise above it. A CEO has to rise above those other concerns and have other people be concerned with their agenda for tomorrow
Mhm.
most of the time. Unfortunately, that 80-20 rule is typically flipped because there is so much pressure. And as humans, A, we want to keep our job. B, we want to do good stuff, you know, and everyone is measuring only what's happening today and what happened yesterday,
Mm,
right? But you as the leader actually are responsible for that same measurement that's going to happen 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. And so it's just hard to balance those pressures with what you need to be thinking of. So it's actually not hard for me, from what I've seen, it's not hard for leaders to see a bigger picture. It's not hard at all because they have those concerns, right? I mean, you don't get to be an executive director or CEO without being smart and aware and driven, right? It mostly, it's there's always exceptions, but in general, you got high quality people doing the leadership,
right.
right? It's that need to answer other pressures that is so hard to get out of. So CEOs see it and they say, yeah, well, that's all well and good, but I got my annual report coming up and we have to meet these metrics. So I'm going to push my staff to do this and I'm going to follow up with them and I'm going to focus on these things that are going to go into the annual report.
One of the things that has disturbed me about strategic planning is that I often think it's not strategic. That is that because it's time specific. It's going to be 2 years or 3 years or whatever they use. So you end up with, a considerable to-do list that has some goals and objectives that are probably appropriate for that period of time, but they are not future thinking. They're not necessarily long time. And I think in the context of reframing, as you have discussed it, reframing requires strategic thinking, not just tactical implementation.
Oh, yeah.
And we're much better at tactical implementation than we are at strategic thinking. It's tough to teach people to think strategically.
Strategic thinking, I don't think, is as hard for people to learn as, I mean, again, I think our leaders are smart, you know. I think it's the emotional pressures that have to be relieved to allow the validity of strategic thinking to be there, like the permission. So for instance, this is why I'm always, I focus not on creating strategic plans, but on implementing them. Because in implementing the strategic plan, that's when the real values that have to guide the organization in getting to point B come out. It even changes what point B might be. So a strategic plan normally should have these two layers. Layer number one is what the point B is. Where do we really want to get to? And I think in general, I've seen that out there. A lot of strategic plans are a little bit unclear, but good ones are clear about where we want to get to, and not in a tactical way. They have a top layer of, here are our goals, right? Now, that could be and should be added to with the question why. I mean, they all have to answer a question why. What is it out there, not just that we want to see different, but that is going to be different in 5 years? What are the major trends that are behind us that we need to get with, right? And there are some major trends. So that's one layer. But the second layer is the practical layer. Okay, we only have so many resources. So within, and here, almost every strategic plan overdoes it because they're a result of committee, right? Well, no, this is important. No, this is important. Yes, this is important. But how are we going to do it? I don't know. We'll find the resources, right? And usually the more entrepreneurial spirits, the ones who are a little bit louder are like, no, we're going to find the resources. And other people are like, okay, fine. It's 3 to 5 years off. We'll find it somehow, or we won't, and whatever. It's just a strategic plan over here. But when you operationalize it and say, who's going to do what, when, how, and with what resources, and with whom, then what happens is, oh, okay, we can only do so much.
Yeah.
So given that we can only do so much, what's our balance between short-term and long-term thinking? How much long-term movement can we do? And is that good enough to meet the outside situation?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but one of the things I think about is when I look at organizations, I can tell what they really value by what they decide to actually resource, both in terms of money and people and time.
Yep.
When you see where they've actually spent their resource, then you know what was of real value to them versus the pretty picture that the strategic plan might offer. That's what makes your point about implementation so significant.
Yeah, and because in the implementation, if you do it consciously, what I mean by that is if you do it with an eye towards getting all the voices that need to be in the discussion present, then the decision about where are we going to put those resources of time, money, staff, is going to be one that's going to have the most power behind it. Often, if you don't do an action plan and create a structure for implementing the action plan, then, and I know that sounds like big, but here's the reality. Um, if you don't do that, what's going to happen is the people with most power, maybe they are the ones who've been in the organization the longest. Maybe it's the executive director who's just got all these relationships and all these ways of getting things done, is going to keep the organization running the way it's always been running. And the people who are newer to the association, the people who are younger, just in terms of age, who have much more connection with the changed world out there, their voices, if they're not included in these strategic decisions, are going to be lost. And that's how associations do not change. The ones who include it in a responsible, appropriate way, right? I'm not saying give away the candy store or anything like that. The ones who include those voices will be faster to change. They'll be more flexible, more agile, more innovative, and more successful. And I'm not saying this because like I'm a communist or anything. I'm saying this because it's simply how reality works. Reality speaks from many voices. The question is, those who have the power, are they going to include in their decisions many voices, much of reality, or just what they know? And if it's just what they know, in this age of speedy change, you're not going to have as much success.
Well, Eliyahu, that's a wonderful way to wrap up for today. I think the last few sentences there are so very, very important. And I want to thank you for joining us today. Before we say our final goodbyes here, if people want to reach you, what is the best way for them to find you and to find your organization?
Okay. To find me, the best way is to reach out on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, I am the only Eliyahu Lotzar, spelled as you see on the screen here. I'm the only one that there is. Probably, I think if you Google me, I'm the only one who is. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will see you. And I'd love to talk, as you can tell, Michael. And the best way to get to my consultancy, Reframed Reality, where I partner with other organizations and like that, is to go to reframedreality.com. Very hard to say. Reframe with a D at the end. So reframedreality.com. And then there's plenty of buttons that say learn more, contact us, that kind of thing.
Well, again, my thanks to you for being so kind to share your time with us today and your insights into Reframed Reality. As everybody knows, Association Futures is a forward-thinking podcast that delves into the future of associations. Our mission is to help you and your organization navigate the ever-evolving landscape by anticipating trends, avoiding short-sighted decisions, and ensuring long-term success. Tune in again to gain insights, foresight, and actionable strategies for your association journey. Have a great day, folks. We'll see you again soon.